Hello again. This is Chad Everett Broshears, the host of Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. Actually, I was scrolling through some of the social medias and I came across something that I really do feel like I wanted to open up a little bit more on. And this one is pretty important to a lot of people. Reason why I wanted to do a video on this one in particular is the meme itself is, why aren't marriages lasting like our grandparents' generation? And of course, they opened it up for discussion and they talked just to talk to people about it. Now, what I've found is really interesting is reasons why we're having such an issue as far as relationships maintaining and developing for the long term is, I mean, there's multiple facets to this. I'm not saying that I'm absolutely right in everything. These are insights. You'll find that like there's going to be experts out there that may have conflicting ideas or maybe refute some of my own ideas. The beautiful thing about all of this is that I'm very science driven. Psychology is one of my favorite subjects. I've gone to school for it, as well as I have a multitude of books. And on a daily basis, I try to find as many people that are psychologically founded or in a foundation of psychology and or human behavior, and spend my time there. I don't really spend a whole lot of time listening to music and just kind of like blanking out to the world or focusing on whatever it is and using music kind of drowned out. I learn. I choose podcasts and YouTube channels and all kinds of things, and I spend as much time as I can learning about as much as I can. I'm also kind of I'm addicted to it. If there's going to be an addiction that you want to have, make it learning. And you can learn about all kinds of things in a world, in a sphere of things that you can learn about. It's a 360-degree opportunity. You can learn about all kinds of things. I choose where I put my attention. It's not on the latest, Cardi B or whoever is going to be. I don't know. I haven't kept up. So I do know a little bit about Cardi B because I have studied some of her body of work, not her music, but who she is as a person, how she influences people, and her history and getting to where she is. Although she's not been a major subject study of mine, I've taken interest in certain areas, listening to what she's had to say about her coming up, if you will. So, but I did write an article back in 2015 about relationships and modern dating. And the title of that article is, I got my PhD in twerking. The general premise of that is this: what you do, like, so you condition yourself every single day for every single thing that you put yourself into. If you spend your time listening to music that's about being hurt and being upset and overcoming that and no longer ever being hurt again, your attitude can start to shift towards that. This is not subliminal. Subliminal would mean that what they're saying doesn't line up with what's being directed necessarily. So you'd have that conscious understanding. The person, if they say, on a surface level, what they say is what they mean, contextually also is what it means. Subliminal became popular during the satanic panic back in the 80s, and mostly it was in the 80s. I think it bled into the 90s a little bit as well, where they were saying that if you played the record backwards, you would get a message out of it, and that was supposed to be, satanic messaging and the devil speaking to you, blah, blah, blah. Which is one of the drawbacks you get from having a overly conservative perspective on things, or the political idea of conservatism and religious dogma or dogmatic thinking or religious thinking in that sense. I'm not downing it, and I do want to touch on my religious position here in a very brief moment. But overall, though, that's what the subliminal concepts are. On the other side of it is how so context. You may have a few words that strike the chord to the individual listening, or you may listen to something, and the total body of the song may not necessarily fully resonate. The tonality, the different types of the different instruments, how they formulate the sound of the song may have a catchy element to it that resonates with your mood enough, or what your desired mood is, that has you listening to it and going, oh, okay, all right. Now, some of it is you have no choice. You were brought up into it. Like I'm a product of the 80s predominantly, and then the 90s was my teen years. But my nostalgia years are more the 80s than they are the 90s, which is an interesting thing. But it also depends on where I'm at in my mood and how I'm affected as a human being. And that has me adjust accordingly to what is more nostalgic to me. Maybe I want 80s pop or 80s metal or 80s R&B or whatever it might be, but that's what resonates. So whenever it comes to music, it's going to be the actual instruments playing, or the sound effects of the music has a value to your mood. The other side that has a value to your mood is going to be the lyrical values, the actual verbiage, the words that are put into the song. Some of it's going to have a catchy pattern or rhythm to it. Some of it will have personal meaning to you. Now you can have that, I've loved this song for 20, 30 years, and now I actually know the lyrics to it, and I'm changing the way that I mentally structure myself while the song is playing, because now you've actually got the depth of the context of the actual words, the message that was intended. Some songs have no message. Some really interesting ones for me that have no message would be Ronnie James Dio, Holy Diver. That song, I'm completely convinced he was in the absolute grips of a drug bender when he wrote that song, because it doesn't make any sense. So to use that as just an example, not all songs do this. I'm not speaking in any absolutes. I'm speaking in a lot of the probability factors is more what I'm speaking about here. So as I wrote the article, back to that point, which is I got my PhD in twerking, it was about how you get people to be attracted to you. So if you spend your time developing yourself to go to the club, to try to look a certain way, or to dance a certain way, or have a specific dialogue with people, whoever you're trying to project yourself to be, you're going to polish that into who you are as a person. Now, it may be that surface level, the wax just got on the car kind of thing. It's not sightly whatsoever. You have to work it in, and then it gets shiny. You may be in that earlier stage, which I've done a video on, the stages of ideas. The beginning, that middle or intermediate area, and then the higher evolution of the idea, and the how it changes characters and who you are and other people as well as around you. Now, they say that you are a culmination of the people you keep around you. Well, you also are part of the people you keep around you, who they are. So if you're going to the club all the time, you're likely going to keep people around you that are going to go to the club, the bar, or whatever it is. The means that you use to attract somebody in is also likely going to be the means that the person expects out of you, the character that they expect to show up. So if you're going to the club in a miniskirt, you barely have anything left to the imagination, and then you're upset at the person after you've been with them for a little bit, that they treat you as if you're an object. You were not responsible. What you're complaining about now, you were not responsible for then. Now, sure, how you present yourself, however you choose to express yourself, but know if you have this repetitious cycle in your life where you keep ending up in the same type of situation, everybody else is at fault. It's likely not them. It's they're reacting to what you do is to create the reality that you live in. I'm going to go off to the club and I'm going to be the baddest looking person in the club. Language on that, right? The female side, maybe I'm the baddest bitch, and the dude's like, I'm the baddest motherfucker, or whatever. I don't really care about the language so much in that setting. What people tell themselves, developing a personal, it could be a short-term mantra, but it still turns into a mantra. It starts to be a statement they say to themselves to kind of hype themselves up or to get themselves ready for something. It's a mantra. So the person may go that route. They go to the club, they're in these skimpy clothing or outfits or whatever it is that tries to make you look like you're somebody that you're not. You draw on the person that's attracted to that, and then you get upset that that person treats you as the way you showed them to treat you in the beginning. If you didn't do any transitional relationship values to build into that relationship, you're more likely to have a relationship that ends the way that it does in this repetitious cycle. If you're waiting for somebody else to show up to be the person in your life, you're probably going to wait most of your life, if not your entire life, to meet that person. It's like a lottery thing at that point. The goal is be the person you wish to date. Don't wait for the person you want to date. because by you being the person that you wish to date, you're likely to draw in the kind of person that you want to date, because they're going to be attracted to that you are that person. So that's better for you than it is to just say, blame everybody else because you had the greatest looking dress or the nicest jeans or whatever it is that you did to dress that way, or you did the right amount of sit-ups or whatever it is, that you think that qualifies you over other people and why people should find you valuable. And then you get upset with them because they treat you in a pattern that's associated with that initial phase of understanding of you. Especially if in the beginning stages, most of you are going to continue to behave that way that you initially met that person at, because too rapid or radical of a change in your behavior also shows that you don't have either stability of who you are, and it's a fear not to be found out, to be unstable, because people want long-term predictability of character behaviors. We call that trust. We also end up with, oh, I'm going to be this way until I exhaust myself, or I have emotionally coerced you into understanding to accept me. I can get into emotional coercion at another time because I don't want to make this video too long. Actually, I'll touch on that and I can go further into it if anyone wants me to. Just show it up in the comment section or on my medias and tell me that you want to discuss that further. The most common relationship styles that I've observed and that I've read about predominantly are this. People date and they emotionally coerce another person into accepting something about them. And how they do it is those little emotional struggles that show up. We call them fights. I don't like when you do X. So therefore, when you do X, I'm going to punish you. I'm not going to consciously understand I'm doing this. Most people don't consciously understand they're doing it. Most of the time, if you consciously understand you're doing it, you're likely going to fall into a diagnosis issue or somewhere closer to being diagnosed of some sort of antisocial personality disorder or trait values and narcissism that's a little bit higher than the average. There's a good chance if you know you're doing it, you're willfully doing this to somebody. But most of the time, in my experience, if people are unaware they're doing it, they just do it because it feels like it's the right direction to go in. Because it was established in the very beginning, this person has the right amount of money, this person has the right looks, has the right car, said the right things, whatever it is, I want to have them in my life. It's falling for the idea of the person versus the person. So who they are as a character or who they are as an idea. So a lot of people fall in love or they try to create the idea of the person into that person. There's issues with the idea of the person. The idea of the person could be, you look this way, you said you were this way, you convinced me that that's who you are, and they don't have the character to back it up. It's the idea of them. They're projecting the idea. You also have in your life how you think somebody should behave in a relationship. And you've built your relationships on that the majority of your life, if not then all of your life. And every person that you meet, you start trying to develop that in them. You need to be this way. Ways you can identify you might be doing this to people is when you say, this is how, why don't you get it? This is how relationships are supposed to be. That's a statement from the idea of a person, not who you are actually dating. So if they present themselves that way, they projected it. But a lot of times you also have some sort of hand in it, and there's a responsibility for you to hold in it. If you don't hold the responsibility, you're also likely to hold it against them because you're not being responsible. So emotional coercion steps in whenever it's we've really enjoyed each other. We've enjoyed each other's company. The conversations seem to line up. Our ideas or outlooks in life are tolerable enough. If not, then very similar, if not the same. I feel that you get me. All of those things kind of like are in that space, or some variations of combinations and different percentages of those elements, but they're all the rapport building concepts in relationships. Sex may be great, whatever it is. It's that early stage. It's the honeymoon. You have less understanding about them, but more of an understanding about your desires. They're satisfying your desires, the excitement, because you don't know what to expect. The adventure of it creates this heightened experience where you're like, oh my God, I think I might have found the right person. It's like a treasure hunt. Now, if you ever watch Treasure Hunters, you'll see a very similar pattern of behavior that's similar to people in relationships in the early stages. This is the right location. We're going to find it here. And then you see them getting fired up over it and the excitement that comes out of it. And you can relate that directly to the way people behave in relationships as to treasure hunting. Now, as somebody's getting really excited about those particular elements, they can't wait to see the person. They spend time during the day thinking about them, but a lot of those thoughts are also fantasizing about how the person's going to be. Doesn't always mean sexually fantasizing, but in the earlier stages, a lot of times that may happen. But there's other things that they fantasize about. This person may be the ends to the means of my financial crisis, or not being financially stable, or not having enough to do X, Y, or Z, travel the world, get the finer things, feel important for once through my money or their money, so I can feel taken care of, not to have to worry about where my bills are going to be paid this month, next month, or the following month, that kind of thing. It could also be that person has this degree of confidence. I like that about them. When we have these conversations, they would win in arguments against other people I necessarily haven't won in an argument with. So there's that as well that can kind of show up. So there's different attribute traits that you may covet in that individual that falls into the fantasizing elements of it. And, maybe this person will discover this particular sensitive area that I have, and they're going to touch it the right way. And I'm going to feel, completely and amazingly rewarded. I'll have that elusive sensation of orgasmic release, whatever it is. And then you go into the relationship, you get to know the person, you start building a profile of what to expect of them. How honest are they regularly? How do they look at you and treat you? How do they treat other people when they're around? How do they manage their own finances? How do they behave around their friends? How are they with their job? What kind of contact can I expect? All of those things come into play. And we're continuously fantasizing the person until what we know about them removes the fantasy, and now we have a profile we expect. That's also where some people start dying off, because the excitement of the discovery and the chase is starting to come to an end. It's no longer a chase. You don't feel the person's necessarily going to leave you. You can be yourself, and you start reducing all of the chase behaviors that keeps people's interest, and you start putting the more of the you behaviors into it that are less exhausting. Is, the average relationship 20 years ago took about 2 years before you started to realize you were dating. Now, because of options, opportunities, people waiting around in each other's messages and their inboxes, on the social medias where people are putting out their life experiences, the food they're eating, the experiences they've had when they went out in public or with themselves, the innermost secrecies that they share online, all of those things where people are watching, and basically it's fairly similar to a predatory behavior. I see this person's doing X. This may be the perfect time to start a conversation with them, or to coddle their upsets and to gain more rapport or clout with that person. Let me do this. And then they, message, oh, I'm so sorry you're dealing with that type of issue, baby girl, or whatever language that the person's going to use. Oh, you're financially struggling. I probably help you out with that. Whatever it is, they come in and gain a degree of value now established, because they're in the waitings, they're in the wings. So you're dating the person, you get past that phase where the discovery and the chase is kind of dying out, and you were starting to show up. Maybe you don't put the toilet seat down, or you run the toilet paper out, and the other person has to go and change out the roll, or the toothpaste is empty, and really would have been better off had he or her or she remembered it when you were at the grocery store together. They left the TV on, or whatever it is, those little things that come in. Can you please make sure you do this? Now, some of those can be holding your core values. Is understandable, and establishing core values is for another video, another time, because I don't want this to go too long. But it can be, all kinds of things. But what happens is the person starts to show that they don't accept it. In the earlier stages, there's going to be quite a few things that you may step over that are not necessarily all that important, because they're not major deal breakers, nothing like that. You may let it slide under the radar, or you may say something, but it doesn't have that emotional backing that justifies how you really feel. It's a light touch, and the person may take note of it, may not. But as you get more familiar with the person and those little things start to set in, I don't like whenever you hide your phone whenever I'm around. And then it turns into this fight. Now, emotionally, what you may be communicating with that person, or are communicating with that person, is the insecurities that may be there. Don't put your phone away when I come around anymore, or I'm suspecting you of whatever their idea of suspecting you is. And then you have, I'm going to emotionally retract from you. Now, I know that there's a lot of guys that have had that experience where there's nothing's wrong. Now, nothing's wrong. I have no issues. And then passive aggressively, they let little things out here or there, or they just wait to aggressively respond with this stage of indifference. And then all of a sudden, that's what's wrong, honey? Nothing. And then guys do it too. I'm not picking on women. Men do this pretty much as often as women. It's just typically there's a different demonstration from how they behave passive aggressively. But those are intentions to try to erode emotionally to get the person to bend to the will of yours, which is, I don't like when you do that. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't come up with your own and understand your own core values. That is, again, for another conversation, another time. But whenever you're doing it to change the person closer to your idea of them, which is this molding process where you emotionally are wearing them down. It's emotional collusion. Or coercion to collusion. You're accepting it finally. Now, what happens whenever you accept something you really don't accept because the reward will be removed if you don't take it, then resentment can start setting in. You may accept it this month, next month, 6 months, a year from now, but at some point in time, you'd be like, you know what? I really didn't want to accept those terms, but I did because I didn't want that person to be upset anymore. I didn't want them to cry anymore. I didn't want them to be angry. Whatever their upset is, the undesirable expression of emotion that has turned you away from who they're being. You also may be very well not in love with the person, but more the idea. So these relationships go back and forth in this tug of war about the idea of who they're with. Then there's the enrollment with other people in their life. I don't like this about my partner, and I want to vent about it. And then now you've got somebody else that is interested in your relationship more than you are, or as equal, or whatever degree that they are to you. But you now have somebody who's become a fan of the way your relationship is going. Some of them are there to help support you and say it's going to get better. Some of them just want to hear that their life isn't as bad as yours. Tell me more about that. Oh my God. Or they'll try out their relationship issues or the way they wanted to do an argument, but they didn't, or what they thought of and the happenstance after the fact. Oh, I should have said this. They haven't tried it out yet. And now you're becoming their guinea pig. You should talk about this. And if they don't accept this, then they don't deserve you, or whatever it is, this empowerment movement that's kind of prematurely empowering people. And when you prematurely empower somebody, you're telling them that they don't need to deal with it and therefore move out of the relationship or force more emotional coercion. Get that person to bend the knee because they need to accept you. They need to accept where you are. Now, I'm not talking about the extremes. I'm not talking about domestic violence. I'm not talking about, the extremes that fall close to that concept of domestic violence. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about the lower levels where you're developing these reasons to resent the person, or they're developing reasons to resent you. Every time you give up something about yourself that you don't fully agree with, you give in to somebody else. Now you're getting closer and closer to resenting the person. You may even resent the person because you won the argument and got them to behave differently than they were whenever they first got with you. You may also, that resentment could show up with, you're not who we started dating. Why did you change? Well, some of those changes could have happened simply because you forced them to, or they forced you to. And now they're paying the consequences. As they say, don't be careful what you wish for. Others could be that they just finally, unbuckled the belt and they let their stomach hang out. I don't need to work out as hard anymore because I got the person in my life now that I feel satisfied with, or I'm settling enough now. I don't need to try anymore. I've had enough bad experiences where I want to focus on other things, and I'm going to let that element go. So these are all parts of why relationships are failing. It doesn't mean that it's wrong that they're failing. It doesn't mean that it's right that they are. It's just, if you're going to complain about it, what do you plan to do about the complaint? Do you want to continue to meet other people and continue to affect other reputations, your own and theirs? Or are you willing to put your foot down and work for it? So here's where that part about what I mentioned earlier about religion comes into play. What I said in my response to that message that I put out, I'll read it for us here real quick. If this would stop. Here it is. So my response to this is, if hers was if our relationship's getting more exposed, that is it. There's a part of that involved in this. So my portion of what I threw in after that is add in social narratives about independence, equality of genders, neglect of traditional roles, and the dismissal of frustration due to the attention of others' offers. Now, how Many women experience men creeping into their inbox, waiting for you to be or to have a bad day, and to post it on social media. They tag the person with their interest, which is the predatorial behavior types. Um, uh, Now that the woman's wait, I'm sorry, tag the person with their interest and wait for another upset. Now that women's private messaging has been highlighted, men experience this as well. Our grandparents were taught to work through their challenges. They couldn't post it online for the masses to coddle them, prop them up on a false ivory tower to gain their affections. Our grandparents consulted their religious leaders and or parental type authorities. Doesn't have to be your parents, it could be other people you see as an authority at some stage or some sort of value that you see as an authority, who more than often than not instructed them to work it out. Now, we are in the age of the disposable relationships hidden under the guise of ride or die devotions that are more like sentiments uttered by someone half asleep or drunk. So don't wait to find the right person, be the right person. And for God's sake, don't air your relationships on social media. You'll get more of what you put out if you do so. Now, the reason why I say my religious piece is going to fall into this is also something for another video, but I'm going to add this in because I do feel like it's a growing reason. I think, and I vote along my lines of consciousness. I do that as far as researching as much as I can. I don't have a political divide or a side that I devote myself to. At some point in time in my life, I aligned more with the liberal and sometimes progressive beliefs or views. That was pre-2016. But again, I vote with my consciousness. Now, people do talk and they chastise or bastardize, and what you find a lot on the political left, and especially the progressive sides, is chastising or bastardizing of religion. Now, I myself am an atheist. I don't hold anything against people religiously. I actually see a great deal of value in religion. There's a lot of structure that religions can bring. There's also harms that come with it as well. But overall, you can get benefit out of it. You get, like I mentioned in that, speaking with their religious, professionals or their clergy or whomever, they give depth of awareness and a gumption to try to work things out, work it through before just giving up or walking away. Just because you have somebody that's sitting around waiting to tell you everything that you want to hear, you can kind of consider that like a professional adulteress or adulterer. They may not necessarily be married or ready to commit adultery on their end, but talk you into it. They may encourage you to leave your relationship because you shouldn't have to deal with the struggles that you've been dealing with. So therefore, get out of that relationship. I'll treat you better. They also know what some of your undesirable hot buttons are, so it can give them an ability to manipulate you further. Now, again, it doesn't have to be malicious manipulation. Could just be they really want to experience something about you. Maybe they like the way your body is. Maybe they like, the way that you present yourself in some way, what you have or whatever it is that would all fall under the present yourself in some way, but still to make it more compartmentalized and understood. And they're going to try to use that as ammunition for their benefit to get you to want to speak with them or to entertain their proposal. So things to keep in mind, we are falling away from long-term relationships because people aren't really willing to work them out. I'm not saying stay into an unhappy relationship, but stop giving in on the things that you don't really agree with so you don't hold that against the person spitefully. All real successful long-term businesses run a lot of contingency plans. Like fire drills is a concept. You can do that with your partner. I really care for you and I want to have the long run. So let's go through some different scenarios. And how would you react under this? Doesn't mean they will, but at least you put the effort in to have that relationship. Say we have a child and God forbid our child gets sick. My family's had a lot of hardship. We've lost 2 children in my immediate family. I lost a brother that was 3 years old before I was born, spinal meningitis, and I lost a niece due to her, not my brother, but my niece's mother, her drug addiction. And my niece got a hold of the pill, took it, and she passed from an overdose. She was also 3 when she passed. So we've dealt with a lot of hardship. It's not an easy conversation to have, but to have a contingency conversation. How are we going to deal with these things? What kind of structures and support systems do we have in place? There's a lot of things that come out of having disagreements. If you do it right, you can keep things exciting for each other. It's kind of um, undesirable thing long term when you date somebody who's so like you that you become, great friends and you lose the lover. But there's a lot of ways of trying to keep those things alive, but it takes work, it takes effort, it takes a desire. So I'm not saying again that I'm the leading expert in any of this, but if anything, it's just an insight. So if you want a longer lasting relationship or reward with somebody who wants to build something with you, you probably should talk about that in a very sincere way. You can definitely get the person's there for sex. You can get that out of the way. Maybe you benefit from it too. Like, okay, well, let's have this agreement. But all relationships are agreements, and those agreements are up to you. Don't inherit a relationship. Create what you want. Don't live by somebody else's rules. Have a clear understanding of that. Make it a relationship contract in its own way. I agree to this. I don't agree to that. And build the relationship you want to have. All right. So with that, guys, this video is going on about 10 minutes longer than I expected or intended for it to. But I do want to say thank you so much for your time and your attention. Comment, share this video. Again, I'm not saying I'm the leading expert in these things. These are just insights. That's what I do. I have a lot of different thinking modalities, and I do like critical assessments of things, venturing deeper into it. Dialogue is something I enjoy. So, agree, disagree, whatever it might be, add to, give your perspective, put it in the comments section, share this video. Maybe that somebody who's going through something that this might help. So, thank you so much for your time. This is Chad Everett Broshears. I am the host of Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. And, in the meantime, until the next one, please keep thinking critically, and appreciate your time. Have a good day.